Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on the dot, so I will go ahead and get started because we do want to maximize our time together. I hope you enjoy my Spotify playlist, Instrumental Hawaiian Classics. So I hope you like it. My name is Dr. Kevin Villegas, and I serve here as the Dean of Intercultural Engagement and Division of Student Life Initiatives in the Division of Student Life. And so you might be wondering, why is the intercultural engagement guy moderating a dialogue? Well, it's because this really is about culture. Broadly defined, we call culture assumptions, values, and norms that underlie and inform our thinking and our behavior. And one of the things we're after here is developing in our students and staff and faculty intercultural maturity. That's the ability to accept challenges from and at the same time build interdependent relationships with different people from other backgrounds. And so today we have an opportunity to do that, to actually engage with people who have different sets of assumptions, values, and norms on a lot of things, but primarily we're talking about political ideology. And so I also do a lot of the work around civil discourse. Lots of colleges and universities are doing that. We at Baylor like to think we take a distinct approach where our Christian faith is center to how we engage across lines of difference. So we really do try to bridge gaps in understanding. So one of the approaches we've taken here at Baylor is to develop skills around building bridges across divides. And those skills really involve primarily listening, how to listen well to one another towards understanding, not trying to prove a point, but to try to understand, building bridges of understanding. And I love the metaphor, the illustration of a bridge, because in order to have a bridge be effective, there needs to be some tension. And typically bridges are built coming from both sides, and there is some sort of chasm that you have to cross. And so I think we're going to be able to model bridge building this evening through our Baylor Democrats and our Baylor Republicans, two student organizations on campus that actually approached me saying that they wanted to do this. They wanted to role model for our campus community that we can disagree well with one another. And that's one of my visions here, that at Baylor we actually become known nationally and internationally as a place that disagrees well, that we are generating great critical thinkers, respectful human beings who listen well and are willing and able to find common ground with one another. And so this is not a debate this evening. My job right now is just to frame our conversation and then bring up and introduce our guests from each group. And so we will get right into that. But one of the things that I am really, really proud of is, again, we met yesterday in my office, both groups, just talking about what we wanted this event to look like. And so I'm really grateful for those of you who came out on a Monday night, perhaps on short notice, to participate in this. But it really is, as the descriptor says on there, a Q&A form. So the questions will come from you. In a moment, I'm going to put up a slide that has a QR code. You're able to scan that and submit questions. And then I will curate the questions and ask those of the participants up here. So that will be the flow of this evening with 8 participants, 4 from each group. The time will go quickly, and I'm looking forward to the questions that you'll submit. So I'm going to move to that slide without further ado, so you can go ahead and get started with that. And then we will finish probably about 5 minutes to 7, so this is only an hour-long event, and as I mentioned, it will go quickly, and I'll just give some closing comments and an announcement at the end. So at this time, I'm going to ask our Baylor Democrats to come up and stand in front of their chairs on the left side of the stage, my right. They will have a chance to introduce themselves in a second. And then I'd love our Baylor Republicans to come on up and join them on the right-hand side of the stage. So come on up. Okay. Give us a second to go ahead and fix that. Is everyone getting that? Okay, we tested it. Promise you we tested it. And let's see what's happening. Feel free to take your seats. You can take your seats. Okay, can someone try it out now, please? Thumbs up if it's working for. Yeah. Okay. Take all questions.
This one work? Can you hear me, guys? Okay, perfect.
Okay, so apologies for that. Like I said, we got here way early to test all the tech because that always makes me nervous, and we tested it a couple times and it was working. So not sure what's happening, but when you know it, it happens. So I have a handheld mic. I'm going to go ahead and then, if it's okay with you, walk to whoever has a question for either group or for both groups. And so before we get started, I'm going to ask each individual, starting over here on my right with Tyler, to go ahead and introduce yourself, just your name, your major, perhaps where you consider home might be interesting, and why is it, so just an opening question, why is it that you have chosen to align yourself with the Democratic Party? And we'll open with that and just go on down the line until we finish here at the end with John.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler Ibarra. I am a junior here studying entrepreneurship at the business school. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee, but I am a full-time student and I'm also a political consultant. I run a political consulting firm based out here in Texas, and we service people in New York also. I would say my political journey began in 2020. I was a Republican, and I worked for Turning Point USA. I was an organizer for them. I was an activism hub president for them, and I was really heavily involved in Republican politics and campaigns. In 2022, I left the party because the party left me. It really hit me that, our democracy is on the line when we saw rioters hit on January 6th. And now we're seeing thousands of anti-LGBTQ bills sweeping our state houses right now. And one of the biggest things is the policies that I was once promoting were actually harmful and not uplifting immigrant families and working class families like my own. I'm very glad to be with y'all, and I hope I can share my journey. And I understand we probably won't agree on everything, but hopefully we can find some middle ground.
All right. My name is Nicholas Kinker. I'm a freshman. I'm studying history and Asian studies. I consider Baylor my home because, I don't know, I live here. I like the people here. But yeah, I was raised in a pretty staunchly Republican household, but I did debate team all through high school, and contrary to kind of the popular opinion of debate team, we actually had some very productive and constructive dialogues like we're having now, and I ended up changing enough of my views on certain topics that I would consider myself a Democrat.
Good afternoon, y'all. My name is Bryce Ricker. I'm a political science major. I'll be going to Notre Dame Law next semester, so that's great. I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin. A few of you know where that is. I'm a Democrat because I believe in tolerance. I believe that everyone should have the freedom to act however they choose, so long as it does not impact others negatively. I believe in equality, that everyone should deserve the right to be treated the same regardless of their race, where they're from, their sexuality, any other defining characteristics. And I believe in economic opportunity, that everyone deserves the right to a decent job, a fair wage. Everyone deserves the right to make a life for themselves, to have a family if they so choose, and that's why I'm a Democrat.
Hello there. My name is JW. I am a junior history major here at Baylor. I am from the Waco area. Very proud of that fact. Go Bears my entire life. 21 years of age. I was actually basically from birth, on campus here. I consider myself a Democrat because I come from a complicated household. I am a multi-ethnic individual, and so that's always been present in my life. I have always been aware of ethnic tensions in our nation. My grandma grew up sharecropping here in Central Texas, actually, and so I've always understood that this country definitely has some issues regarding race and ethnicity. And when I got into politics around age 13, I knew that I would align myself more with whichever party considered those issues. And one party seemed to kind of take a colorblind approach that racism isn't really a big deal in this country. It can kind of be downplayed. And the other one actually tried to speak to our issues. Even if it was not perfect, it still acknowledged us and gave us a voice in their party. And so that's why I'm a Democrat. That's why I started to become a Democrat. And then the further I've learned, the more I've learned about the left side of the political spectrum, the more I've fallen in love with it.
Does this work? Can you hear me? Okay, so my name is Cadence Ames, and I'm from Denver, Colorado. I'm an international studies pre-law major with minors in logic, reasoning, and analysis and entrepreneurship. It's really complicated, I know. So I didn't really understand politics that much. When I was in middle school, everybody was just like, oh, I hate Trump. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then during the pandemic, I was bored, and I was in Colorado, and so everything was shut down. And I really started researching what it meant to be on either side. And I went to my dad one day and I was like, I think I'm a Republican. And he's like, cool, I'm Republican too. And since then, I've realized that my family did lean more conservatively, more Republican, but it wasn't something that I really realized until I started asking questions. We weren't a political family, I suppose you could say. But I am fiscally conservative, I'm socially conservative, and so those values have carried with me to today.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Flanagan. I'm from College Station, Texas, and I'm a poli-sci major with a minor in history and on the pre-law track. I'm a Republican primarily because of my Christian beliefs. My Christian beliefs inform my political views. Christian beliefs such as protection for the unborn, traditional family structure, and individual agency are really important to me, and I see those best reflected in the Republican Party.
Good evening, y'all. My name is Matthew Marshall. I'm studying supply chain management and risk management insurance here. I'm a senior here at Baylor. My hometown is Avon, Connecticut, and I've always grown up a conservative. And as I moved into high school and started really diving in deep of what I really believe and how I want to see the country go, being in Connecticut, especially during the COVID lockdowns, and even before that, I've seen what's happened in my state, businesses leaving, taxes going up, restrictive bills being passed on firearms that are hurting law-abiding citizens, and other metrics that are bringing down my state, which I love. And so I got involved in high school and throughout with Republican candidates to help in a pretty blue-leaning state. And so I believe that the Republican Party and conservative values align with my views and will ultimately lead to a stronger, safer, and better America for everyone.
Good afternoon. My name is John Rogers, and I'm a freshman here at Baylor. I'm in the aviation program and also serve on student government here. I would say primarily the reason I'm a Republican is when you look at the start of our country, those founding fathers' beliefs aligned pretty much identical to the modern-day Republican in that low taxes, pro-life, make the United States as a global leading power. And then also, my friends across the aisle will say there's racism in America, and the clear fact is it simply does not exist.
Okay, thank you for taking time to introduce yourselves. And so again, if you arrived in late, we were having some technical difficulties with a QR code to gather anonymous questions that I would curate and then ask. And so I'd love if someone in our audience would get us started with a question for either or both groups, and I'm happy to walk to you with the microphone. Great.
Test.
Like me to introduce, or do you want me to just ask the question? Sure. Okay. So I am originally from Denver, and I have family in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Orlando, New York City, Seattle. Those are traditionally big, left-leaning progressive cities that have been run by progressive politicians since about the 1950s. And I have tried to figure out why those cities have seen record unemployment, record poverty growth, record job losses, record educational decreases in people engaging in high school education. And I'm torn between this aspect, and that is, are there economic and cultural, factors playing into that, or is it all just, there are people who are, let me ask it this way. In these larger cities, you have seen people leave these cities en masse into places like Houston and Austin and southern Florida and rural cities, leaving urban areas. And these, urban areas have been technological centers of innovation and entrepreneurship and finance and economics and all these things. And the political landscape has not changed, but has grown even more tight-knit in its, economic and social liberalism. So how can we increase or retain the entrepreneurship in these larger cities while also realizing that a lot of the traditional liberal policies in these places like Minneapolis, like Portland, Seattle, Vancouver have led to increasingly problematic social results, if that makes sense?
So first, is this on? Okay. So first, I'll say, yeah, there's a lot of crime. There's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of unemployment in major cities. There's a lot of people in major cities. If you look at per capita, per 100,000 people, it's not really an issue. It's been charged that Republicans are better at managing economies. And on the federal level, we can debate whether that's true. But look on the state level. Would anyone rather live in Wyoming or Connecticut, Oklahoma or Michigan, Minnesota or Alabama? If you look at life expectancy, the places where people live the longest are Connecticut, are New York, are New Jersey. You got to go. The only Republican state in the top 10 is New Hampshire. The only Democratic states in the bottom 20 for life expectancy are Nevada and New Mexico. We seem to be doing something good. If you look at averages across the board, education, wages, life expectancy, happiness are all higher in Democratic states. And it's been charged that there's crime in Democratic states, especially in large cities, but per 100,000 people, where's the most homicides? It's Louisiana, it's Mississippi, it's Alabama. It's not these Democratic states. We're doing pretty good. If you look at drug deaths, West Virginia, Alabama are higher than Chicago. There are not, these problems are real and they do need to be addressed. But there's a reason Democrats keep getting reelected in these major cities, because people believe their policies work, people believe their policies are popular, and on a whole, it seems to be working out.
I'm going to use two states as an example, California and Texas. When you look at California, you can steal up to $750 and not be prosecuted. That's why we're seeing all this rampant crime, the move to Texas, and then these people decide, well, why should I have a job? If I'm going to be stolen from in broad daylight when I'm at work, why to be stolen from? And then look at Texas. If you do that, if you steal 1 cent, you're going to jail. And that's why there's record mass going to Texas. And then if you look at the guns, well, the strict gun laws, they make it where if you can do whatever you want to do, and they go kill them all. So it's pretty simple that the Republicans, it's very simple.
That specifically within those areas such as Los Angeles, Chicago, you're seeing these DAs, district attorneys, releasing people from these cases who shouldn't be released out on the streets. There's Houston, hundreds of criminals being released in Houston, and you have to look and see who's running these districts, and it ultimately comes down to the state and county and looking at who's in charge of your who's in charge of running these counties and things of that nature. And like you'll see in Los Angeles, like you mentioned, the amount of money they're spending on the homeless issue, and it's not getting better. And they've been in power for decades, and you're wondering why an issue is not getting better. And it's because in that case, the funds aren't being allocated properly and used most effectively, and they're just throwing more money at a problem and not getting to the solution of it.
Great. Anybody else want to address that, or are you good?
Yeah, I can respond.
Okay.
Yeah, are any of y'all graduating this semester? All right, a few people. Of the people graduating, or who hopefully will graduate when their time at Baylor is done, for those of us looking to stay in Texas, where are you going to move? Where are you going to get your first job, start your career, start your family? Are you going to East Texas? Are you going to the Northern Panhandle? Are you going anywhere west of San Antonio? Or are you going to Dallas, to Houston, to Austin to get started? These are the fastest growing areas in Texas, these Democratic-run cities. Why not anywhere else? Why are people starting families in Houston? Why are people starting families in Dallas, Austin? These are the biggest cities. These are the Democratic cities. Something seems to work.
So briefly, I'm from Denver, as I mentioned, and Denver had so many people moving there, and recently they've actually seen people moving out of Denver, and it's because if you live in Denver, Colorado, I think you have to make at least around $75,000 a year so you won't be below the poverty line. But if you make, I have family members who in southeastern Colorado in a conservative area can make $50,000 and they're set for life. And so I think that you do see a lot of people moving to these big cities, but you also see a lot of people moving out.
Great, thank you. And I think it bears mentioning, because we had talked about this when we had met yesterday, that and they had shared they're speaking for themselves as individuals and not representing their entire party or entire platform of their party. In fact, I know from our conversations yesterday, you don't all fully agree with everything that's put forward by your party. So I think that's important to remember, that they're not speaking on behalf of every Democrat or every Republican. And so when we did have the QR, there was a disclaimer on there to please keep your questions brief and courteous. So I want to apply that to this way of soliciting questions as well. So if there's another question, I see one over here, and then I'll come back over here and here. So try to keep your questions brief and to questions, not comments, so we can hear from all panelists.
Yes, thank you very much. So considering current political circumstances, it is not wholly unlikely that Social Security will be cut or abolished, or that benefit payouts will reduce or be delayed in the coming years. If this were to happen, how would we protect low-income and disabled prospective and current retirees from market volatility that could wipe out their retirement funds? And this is for both.
Here, we can start. Yeah, both Trump and Vance have made it very clear that they do not plan on cutting Social Security benefits. So that's pretty much all we have to say on that for now.
Does this even work? Can I? Okay, you know what? No, we're going to go back to high school theater and we're going to project our voices. Okay. Oh, okay. Terrible. Yeah, it works. All right. This one work? It works. Hello. Okay. So your argument was that Trump and Vance, I'm sorry, got distracted a bit. Your argument was that Trump and Vance said that they will not cut Social Security. They also said that every migrant they send to Sukkot, the El Salvadorian concentration camp, would be a violent criminal. 75% of them do not have criminal records. So when they say that they're not going to do something, but they have proven track record of lying about their policies, and when you look at the Republican budget, $880 million in the committee that manages Social Security. That money's got to come from somewhere. So what's getting cut?
To address your comment about the illegals, in the Constitution, it states that if you cross that border illegally, you're a felon. So that argument holds no water. And second off, I mean, if you look at the Democrats, they've broken many promises. The Republicans break many promises. I mean, that's what politicians do. And if you look, the Democrats have broken way more promises than the Republicans have. Trump said he's going to build a border wall. Did he do it? Yes. Is he going to help our elderly? Yes, he's going to do it. He helps people. And the Democrats have done nothing to help. Record high inflation, that hurt a lot more people than any type of Social Security cuts are ever going to do.
So one thing that I would like to address, and I've worked with a lot of political candidates, and of course there are going to be promises broken. But of course, when you see Donald Trump, he said he's going to fix our immigration system, and he did exactly the opposite. He gutted our asylum system. He separated 5,000 children, and he cut the legal way to get into this country by 50%. This is not a man who is concerned about border safety. This is a man who just wants to run on an issue. 2024, we had HR 2. Basically, this was a tough immigration bill that was bipartisan. And what did Donald Trump do? He said, no, we can't do it. We have to run with it. So again, there is a border issue, and we have to address it. Democrats, we have to address the border. We have to, make sure that the people who are coming in are safe. But on the other hand, we have to be smart about it. There are 2.6 million immigration cases right now that have been backlogged. It takes an average of 5 years to get into this country, to become a U.S. citizen, even longer. And so, when it comes to immigration, Trump is just using it as a ploy to win a campaign. And that's every campaign. But we have to address that. Trump, he did not do anything to fix the immigration system here.
Okay, one more response, and then we'll move on to another topic just because of the time. And I want to there's at least 3 other people who have questions. So go ahead, and Candace, and respond.
No, the question was about Social Security, and I feel like we kind of spiraled off into immigration, and I really want to circle back to it. So the idea that Social Security isn't really an issue, it won't affect anyone, and that inflation was high because of COVID, and that's so much of a bigger deal than Social Security. Social Security is pretty much the only reason that about half of our senior citizens are not homeless right now. And it is probably going to be the reason why about half of y'all are not homeless when you're 65. It is an amazing program, built by FDR. It needs to be completely funded as is, and honestly, I've heard arguments for expanding it as the population has expanded. It also covers folks with disabilities. It's a huge deal for them. It also helps children of survivors of extreme parental death, so orphans are also covered in Social Security. It's a large spanning program that not a lot of people seem to be fully informed on, and I think any cuts to it whatsoever are an incredible threat to our society.
Okay, Candace?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment on the Social Security thing because I would love to get to immigration. But when it comes to Social Security, like Lindsay says, I don't think there's any plans on it being cut. But when you look at welfare in general, I think the welfare state in the United States of America is extremely broken. Dr. Villegas told us to tell stories. So I'll just tell a quick one. My cousin Jamie, drug addict, lost her kids. The government put her in an apartment. She burned the entire building down doing meth. And yet the government put her in another apartment. And so I think that while welfare systems can be beneficial, they are often abused in this country.
Great, thank you. We're going to go over here, then back there, and then over here.
Okay, first, I'm an immigrant, and if you want to come to America, please come the right way. There is no reason to cross across the border. But that's not what my question is. My question is directed to the Democrats. Guys, HAEW, love you, bro. Uh, but here's the thing. You guys talk a lot about tolerance, and I respect it. However, I do follow you guys on Instagram, and your last story basically implies that anyone that supports President Bukele from El Salvador and President Trump are Nazis. And I'm just going to quote it because I don't know who controls the social media. Yeah, yeah, I can do it. It goes without saying that, but we'll say it anyway, that this is straight up evil, and anyone who supports is a moral bankrupt. POS, who would have sided with the Nazis? Again, you're calling 49.85% of the country Nazis, if I'm more or less correct, if I remember my stuff.
No,
The
I am
dude had
calling-
legal protections, which, no. The Supreme Court just did some stupid, they just sent it back. And they sent him to a death camp, which is also no. But my problem is not with that. My problem is like calling the other side Nazis. If we're going to have a dialogue, which is the support of this, it's the whole reason this was put on. Why call people Nazis? Can we just disagree on the actual problems with Bukele, or do we need to actually call them Nazis?
All right, can I respond, please? I did not call 49% of the country Nazis. I did not say anyone who supports Trump a Nazi. I said that anyone who supports the specific action of President Trump not to bring back someone who he illegally deported to a concentration camp is a Nazi. That's fair, in my opinion. I think that it's a pretty simple issue. On this one specific case, I don't see why we cannot have simple agreement. He had legal protection to stay in this country. The Trump administration admitted it was a mistake to send him back, or to send him to El Salvador. They didn't send him back. He's from Venezuela, they sent him to El Salvador. And so no, I don't have any problem saying that you are morally bankrupt if you think that that's a good thing that we should do as a society is, yeah, we made a mistake. We ruined someone's entire life. We destroyed their families, but that's fine. It's okay. It's whatever. It's like, no, this should be a nonpartisan, bipartisan issue. Even if you are strict on border security, he was here. He had legal protection. So if you're a law and order person, why can't they follow the law?
This specific case reference, and my apologies, I don't know all the details, and I think that's very unfortunate. Unfortunately, our government does not run efficiently, and that means there are going to be people who are not meant to be somewhere else. And I think that's really unfortunate because you see all these problems in El Salvador and Venezuela, because if you don't know, in El Salvador recently, their president started being super strict, and basically if you are gang affiliated, you will go to these prisons and you basically have to work. You have to basically make your way. And in Venezuela specifically, President Trump, with Richard Grenell, who is actually the first gay person to ever be in a presidential cabinet. He's not actively in his cabinet, but he still works for the Trump administration. They basically, it wasn't even a trade. They were able to send, I think it was hundreds of illegal Venezuelans in the United States back to Venezuela, and I think they got between 5 and 10 Americans back in the United States who were incarcerated wrongly in Venezuela. And so I do agree that there is, of course, issues. Like the government, of course, is going to have issues, and this is so terrible. Again, I don't know the situation, but at the same time, the Trump administration is doing a lot of good things, and we have to trust that, at least I do as a Republican, trust that they will do what's right at the end of the day.
All right. As someone whose mother's side fled communists in North Vietnam that tried to assassinate her mother, and whose father's side fled the Nazi regime in Germany, this issue hits very closely for me. But firstly, no offense, but I feel like we're moving, like we're not saying that the Trump administration has never done what it wants to do, or that it always malfunctions. It's that if you support keeping someone in El Salvador, which their prisons is similar to like the Soviet system, the Dutch system, the Nazi system, are by definition concentration camps. If you support keeping someone there, then as JW said, like he believes that you are morally bankrupt. Now, I may disagree on that terminology, but I'll just say that like like growing up in a very red area, like yeah, political name calling is a thing. I'm not saying that it necessarily is right or that it's just, but in my opinion, I think it's not constructive to go on someone's social media and try and talk about like, oh, you called someone names or like whatnot when discussing actual policy. That's just my opinion.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Yeah, so my question is directed towards the Republicans, particularly any Christians. So you say the Republican Party is one that holds Christian beliefs, and I'm wondering where you see that when the President Trump has made specific comments very derogatory towards women about grabbing them or walking into their dressing rooms, or even just treating and having multiple wives, where the Christian ideals kind of come from in that. And in regards to abortion, studies shown last year that abortion rates have increased along with infancy death rates have increased since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So I'm just wondering how the Republican Party holds those Christian values.
Yes, so I can speak to the Christian aspect of it. I'm a Christian, and I, like all Christians, believe that people are sinners. They're broken, and I don't defend Trump in everything he's done, and I don't expect any other Christians to either. He's done terrible things in his personal life, but I think it's necessary that we draw a distinction between someone's personal life and how well they can lead a country. I mean, I believe Trump has certain virtues, even if he does have vices. I mean, courage, for example. He was nearly assassinated, but he continues to lead this country. He is also courageous on the national scale. He didn't get us into any wars. He's peace through strength, right? I think that's a very important aspect of Trump's character that often gets overlooked. If someone else wants to answer to the...
So when it comes to overturning of Roe v. Wade, unfortunately, that didn't make abortion illegal. All it did was make it so it would go back to the states. And so what Roe v. Wade basically did is it set parameters. So it basically, in the first trimester, XYZ, second trimester, XYZ, third trimester, XYZ, for example. Like states could determine at that point. So all Roe v. Wade does is actually send the power back to the states. And so when conservatives were fighting for Roe v. Wade to be overturned, they were completely aware that some states, like California, would allow abortion up to birth, up to 40 weeks or whatever. And so there are other states, though, that, like Florida, who passed an act that made abortion less available and illegal. And President Trump almost voted against that. But it was the Christians, conservatives in the Republican movement who convinced Trump to vote on that and vote pro-life. And so that Trump is not a perfect person. He has not always shown Christian values, but the Christian conservatives and the Republican Party can push Trump to that way. And I think that is I think it's great for the Republican Party.
All right. I'm going to try to keep it brief because I feel like the question was about Donald Trump, and I'm not going to spend more time ragging on him than everyone else has. But just personally, as a Christian myself, I just wanted to say, if you're talking about, people commonly associate like the Republican Party as like the Christian party where it's full of Bible thumpers or whatever. But as a Christian who was raised in Christian values, one of the ones that always stuck to me is the idea of the social good. I can sit here and talk about, oh, Jesus overthrew through the tax collectors and stuff. I can cite the Bible, but I don't want to. But a common idea in Christianity is that the greater good, the societal good, the good of society always outweighs the individual. It's always the family over the individual. It's always society over the individual. If you look at the early church, every single time that there is a discussion, the common refrain was always that no man is an island. You cannot solely look out for yourself. And so when I was researching and I learned about, there are so many more people than me. There are immigrants, there are disabled people, there are people that need welfare to live, there are people that are going into debt because of insulin payments. I personally moved towards the Democrats because of this Christian idea that the social good, the good of society, always outweighs the individual.
Go ahead, Tyler.
So I think one of the things that we need to, realize is, all of us come from different backgrounds. Some of y'all are Christian, some of y'all may not be Christian. And I think that's what's very beautiful about our country is that we can all come together and do a dialogue. When I look at presidents, I don't look at their religion at all. I look at their policies. President Biden, the reason why I voted for him is because of his policies. He was one of the strongest labor supporters. He cut the cost of insulin. He has made healthcare more affordable with President Obama. And so something that I encourage all of you to do is to look into the people you're supporting and not look at their so-called religion, but their policies in general. Because for me, when I look at, let's say, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, I see one candidate who incited violence on January 6th and is restricting a woman's right to choose. Allie Phillips in Tennessee did not deserve to lose her baby. Her baby, basically in Tennessee, she wanted to get an abortion because they said the baby was gonna die. She got sick because in Tennessee, they have very strict abortion laws. Same with Atlanta. They needed to deliver this baby that was dead. I'm sorry, it was Virginia. They needed to deliver this baby that was dead already. But because of all these abortion restrictions, they can't do that. And so I just encourage all of y'all to just really look into these policies. Because for me, I'm a Democrat. I'm more of a centrist Democrat. I'm willing to work across the aisle because I believe in the greater good. I believe in diversity, equity, inclusion for all people, white, black, brown, despite your sexuality, whatever. Everyone deserves equal opportunity. We're not up here saying that we want equal outcome. We're saying we want equal opportunity.
Great, so we have another question back here. We'll keep moving.
My question is for both sides. So what is one view or opinion that you share with the opposing party and why?
Can I say? Oh, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it's actually a really good segue to what Tyler was talking about. There's actually been in the Texas State House, I cannot remember the name of the Republican representative who put it forward, but there is a bill currently being debated on, I hope it passes, that amends the language around different medical procedures because this is true. Abortion is like kind of a very broad term and how we use it and define it in the law, and so you do have cases where the fetus is already dead and things of that nature, but you still can't terminate the pregnancy because that is considered an abortion. And so you have women dying, women getting sick. And so I think that particularly, I think even if we might disagree over the legality or morality of abortion as a practice, I think something simple like that, which is a pretty easy way to come together. And so I definitely agree with them there on trying to amend that law.
I would say I do not fully support Trump's tariffs that he recently tried to enact, and then now there's, of course, the 90-day delay on them. I don't think those are going to be as beneficial for the country as he thinks they are. So I think we can definitely find some common ground on economic terms.
I'm against abortion. I would like to see as few abortions performed as possible. It's a physically and psychologically scarring procedure. Unfortunately, bans have not been shown anywhere in the world to be effective in reducing the amount of abortions. They just make it less safe, and they make people move a bit further. Methods that are proven to prevent abortion, comprehensive sex education, access to health care, access to a living wage, these are proven to reduce abortion. And if you're against these policies, I would ask, which is more important to you, reducing abortions or appearing like you want to reduce abortions?
It's super brief, but I think gun violence is a huge issue in the United States. I personally love the Second Amendment. I'm really into guns, but I also understand that it's an issue. I don't know how to solve it. Maybe somebody has a great idea. I don't know, but I do agree that I think everybody agrees that it is a serious issue in this country.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me see. I can't speak to specifically like policies because I think those are the I would agree. I would just rehash that, but I think culturally, I did come from a Republican area, and there's some rude Republicans, but I think that generally the Republican Party, when you find the right ones, they can be extremely caring, welcoming, nurturing. They're even speaking to like older Republican terms. Generally, a lot of the time, Republicans were generally the party of anyone that was like disaffected, people that were pushed out to the outskirts of society, and I generally agree with like recognizing those kinds of people.
Yeah, I think for me, during COVID, between both the Biden administration and Trump administration, under the Federal Reserve, we saw massive amounts of money being printed. And so I think both sides would probably be in agreement that inflation is caused by the printing of money. And so getting our country's spending under control and decreasing the amount of money we print so we don't just keep driving up inflation is a big issue economically that I think both sides would probably agree on somewhere in that spectrum.
I think one of the things I agree with is I think we need to reform our tax system. I think taxes should be lower, but we have to find a tax system that works for all of us. And I do agree with Republicans of like we need to lower taxes, and that's true in some blue states. I live in New York, and so we have very high taxes there. And so I've worked with a lot of candidates to see a lot of middle class and working class families get tax relief. And so hopefully in the future, Republicans and Democrats can come together and fix our tax system.
So I would say that I've several Democrat friends, and they both agree, as well as me, that veterans of our United States are cared for horribly. Like my uncle served in Vietnam, he came back and basically he was pushed to the wayside. And like we need to reform this where Democrats and Republicans alike can say, hey, you need to be given these benefits. You need to at least have a somewhat of a decent house to come to at night. That's what I would say.
I'd like to come to like a really big point in agreement with you there. I think that as someone who comes from a military family, everything I have is from the United States military. My grandma, like I said, grew up sharecropping. My grandpa grew up just as poor in Beaumont. Both of them joined the United States military. That's how they met. That's how they married. And I do think the Democratic Party, in some ways, is needlessly anti-military and like cruel towards veterans. You see the jokes thrown around. It's like, oh, you served in the military. Are you a war criminal? Did you like killing Muslims or whatever? And I think it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. I think that our veterans are the best of us, and I feel really passionate about that.
First off, I just want to plug this guy's club, Students Demand Action. It's a nonpartisan club standing against gun violence, so everybody's welcome, and just come learn a little bit more about like what we can do to stop gun violence without like completely getting rid of the Second Amendment. And for my question, it's more of like a learning question. It's to you, like both of everybody up there, what is the difference between equity and equality, and why is one better than the other?
It's pretty simple. Equality is equal opportunity. So when, let's say somebody legally immigrates to this country, they have an opportunity to come here, make a life for themselves, all that kind of good stuff. Equity is equal outcome. Equity is equal outcome, and that's wrong because why should somebody who busts their butt to make a life in this country have the same outcome as somebody who's on federal government food stamps and doesn't know the value of a dollar? So if you have equality, that's what we need, because that's motivation for whoever to go and do the best job that they can do.
So when I think, when it comes to equality, as you mentioned, we're trying, at the end of the day, we're trying to make sure that people have equal opportunity. You're not going to get equal outcome at all. As much as you try, as much programs you try to do, there's not going to be equal, equal outcome. But one of the things that we also have to realize is that a lot of people come from from very low socioeconomic situations. And I'm not saying someone who may not be as qualified should be in that position, but I'm saying that they should have the same ability to have the interview with that employer. Because a lot of Republicans will say, well, you guys use DEI and it's hurting us. And I want to make it clear that diversity, equity, inclusion is not just for gay people, brown people, and black people. It's for white people. If you're a woman, it's for you too. If you have a disability, it's for you too. If you have a mental physical disability, it's for you too. And so we can disagree on the ways to get there, but I think that we can find some commonality of we want people to have the same opportunities, because my family came here and escaped the Philippines during a dictatorship. And they're now living the American dream, and I want that for every single person in America. But we can only do that if we push for policies like this.
Yeah, if somebody really wants to answer that, we have time for that, and I'll ask one more question at the end.
I guess I just want to say, bouncing off of that, I do think that equity is definitely important. One of my very good friends here at Baylor, they about 3 years ago were struck with a very debilitating disease, and it really impacted a lot of their schoolwork, their study time, what they were physically able to do. And so equality, legal equality, it still had the same legal opportunity to do everything at Baylor, but obviously they couldn't. They needed time and a half for tests and things like that. And that's where equity comes in, the OLA office, things of that nature. And so I don't think that equity is necessarily some kind of destructive or evil thing. I think that it addresses issues in society that simple legal equality cannot.
And just to close out for us, obviously the Republican Party and conservatives, there's already laws on the book for everything, equality, America, we love this country, and our main goal is we want MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence on how people go about in life. And so evaluating people based on their skills and things of that nature instead of just their background, because they can't change that.
Great. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the time would go by quickly when we have 8 participants and some really good audience questions and really complex issues that we're talking about as well. So I just want to thank each of the representatives. But I do have one more question. I'd love if each of you respond to this and do so succinctly, just so we could move through. But just what is, oftentimes we can be divided on lots of issues. You demonstrated tonight that we could sit even in a public forum and talk to one another and listen to one another and still not necessarily agree with one another. But what are some things that you plan on doing as an individual and maybe as an organization, if you want to speak to that too briefly, to build bridges of understanding with people with whom you disagree on campus, to create a culture where we actually are dignifying, respecting, supporting one another, but still disagreeing. So go ahead.
One of the things that I think hopefully we can do in the future is have more dialogues like this and market it on a higher scale, so more people at Baylor can know about this and feel more comfortable being here. I think it's very great that we can come here and have dialogue. For me personally, all the campaigns that I work with common sense Democrats, and I've worked with Republicans before to pass bills and to get things done. And so my pledge to every one of y'all is, we're gonna figure out where we can work with the Republicans, and hopefully we can find some common ground, whether it's legislation or even on campus.
Yes, so JW and I have talked about making this like an annual thing, so I would really love to see more dialogue, just like they were saying. But personally, I think I tend to shut people out because I associate them with, say, the Democratic Party entirely, but tonight was really instructive in seeing that not every issue with the Democratic Party the person may subscribe to. And I think that works both ways, so I think we can really start to have constructive conversations when we realize that one person is not the party in its entirety.
Yeah. I'm not a part of. I guess yeah. I like having these dialogues, but just like a personal thing I try to do is like yeah. I tend to shed people. I tend to assume very quickly about people, and I think that um whenever I try to discuss like politics, this is just like me going forward. I always try to end with us like connecting as people and trying to either agree on something or just share something that humanizes us or that we can bond over that may not necessarily be political, because I feel like people try to separate like politics and everything else a lot when I feel like they are intertwined, and that like even if we may not think it, humans are very emotional creatures. We're not rational. We're not rational at all. And so I think like if you're discussing politics, I think it does actually help to like intersperse it with humanizing just dialogue, you know?
So I'm from, again, Denver. I don't agree with any of my friends back home. My favorite aunt worked for Planned Parenthood for 12 years. I don't agree with that, but at the same time, a lot of the people here watching me today probably don't agree with most of what I said. I am known for having friends from all sides of the aisle, and that's something that I continue to do because I think it's really important. And I'm pretty set in my conservative beliefs, and it's going to be hard to change my mind, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. And I think it's really important. And Lindsay and I moving forward, we really want to further discussions like this. And I think it's important because I don't know if we change any minds tonight, but maybe one day we will, or maybe they will. And so I think it's important to have these conversations and to work with other groups and just to learn. I think the best way that I learned how to argue my opinion was by learning the opinion of the other side. So I love arguing and pretending I'm a liberal. And I think that's really important for people to understand the other side.
I appreciate discussions like this. I think we should make this an annual thing. Well, not me, we. I won't be here. But I think y'all should continue doing this. One thing to build cooperation, I've attended a lot of events with Baylor Better Together, the campus interfaith group, to build intercultural interfaith understanding. Definitely recommend them if you want to expand your horizons, meet new people who you might not necessarily agree with.
I guess from my perspective, with even the Waco community as well, I've done a lot of, been in college Republicans all 4 years now, so even outside the Baylor campus, I've spent time talking with voters in McLennan County during primaries and past election cycle and things like that. So I've learned other sides of viewpoints as I'm going out for Republican candidates too, so I'm always learning what the other side's thinking and how, where they're coming from as well on certain issues.
Yeah, so I think this event was really helpful to me. I'm generally not good at these kind of things. I am very, I like interpersonal conversations. Like these kind of like 2-minute dialogues, they're kind of a bare minimum thing. You don't actually seem to go deep with a lot of people. And so I think the most important thing that I think we should all take from this is to not take it as like an endpoint, like, oh yeah, the Baylor Republicans and the Baylor Democrats, they met one time per year. It's like, no, we should be having these conversations with each other. It's like, hey, let's go get coffee. Let's just hang out and have a 2-hour-long conversation about everything, life, me and the universe, immigration. As a matter of fact, I will probably reach out to Pedro later and we'll get coffee sometime. I do, yeah.
Yeah, like I'll use this as an example. Like I'm in student government, and there's some things that go on I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, I can work with those people and maybe find a common solution. And I think I can take that, in here my time at Baylor or when I move back home or whatever. Just you have a problem and you come with a solution. Maybe not a solution you ultimately wanted, but it's a compromise you can work with those friends across the aisle with.
Great, thank you. Why don't we give a round of applause for our participants? And I just want to say thank you personally for having the courage to put yourselves out there in a public forum and disagree with one another and being willing to come together to plan this event. I think it was even fun just getting to know each other in that planning process. So there are some things at 7:01 I want to get you out of here, but I want to highlight the Baylor Bridge Building Fellows Program. This is something that we started last year, and it's really about, like I mentioned at the beginning, building bridges of understanding. So it's very skills-based. We have a cohort of fellows of around 40 right now. Some are graduating, and we're going to train our next cohort in the fall. Some of our bridge building fellows are in this room even. So if you are interested in developing skills around listening, navigating tension constructively, sharing your story, that's really what the Bridge Building Fellows program is about. And we do events throughout the academic year. One way we do that is each month we have a dinner and discourse event where we curate disagreement and we practice our skills, much like a foreign language or a sport or a music instrument. You learn these basic skills, but you practice them, you hone them. And so if we're going to build bridges of understanding, find some common ground, move forward as a society, then I think we need to start by listening to one another, seeing one another, and recognizing that we belong to one another. So if you're interested in becoming a Baylor Bridge Building Fellow, just email intercultural@baylor.edu. You can also email that email address if you have any feedback for this event in particular or ideas for future events. And so this is something we hope to continue. I want to thank the leaders from each of the groups for taking the initiative to reach out and get this going. Thank you all for coming. I'm sure we'll stay up here in the front if you have any questions or want to talk to any of us. Thank you.
Thank you.